If we could go ahead and find a seat, we're going to get started here in just a second. Thank you. No public. I would like to call to order the January 13th, 2021 meeting of the State Board of Education. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa?
Present.
Mr. Durham?
Present.
Dr. Ernest?
Present.
Dr. Freitas?
Present.
Mr. Gastineau?
Present.
Dr. Jenner?
Present.
Mr. Mapes?
Here.
Mr. Miller? Ms. Moat?
How are you, buddy?
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Rentschler?
Here.
Chairman Watts?
Here.
Have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you and welcome. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the December 9th, 2020 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Statement of the chair, I would just like to welcome our newest member and the Secretary of Education, Dr. Katie Jenner, to our inaugural meeting here. And glad to see that the kiddos are getting back into the buildings. I know that it is really tough for schools to keep them there, and they're working hard to do that. So please know that your efforts are recognized. We know it's difficult, but we also know that being in those buildings is the best place for them. So keep up the good work. Board member comments and reports.
Since I'm the new member here, I'll just pause and say I'm so honored and pleased to be a part of the State Board of Education with you. Many of you have served for years, and I've watched the great work you've done, so it's great to join you, ultimately serving our Indiana students and educators to the best of our ability every day with every vote. So again, thrilled to be a part of this team.
Awesome. Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, Brian, we have no public comment, correct? Correct. Consent agenda. We have IPS, Manual High School baseline reset, and excessive homeschool exit audits.
I need to recuse myself from item B of excessive homeschool audits.
Brian, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask a question here. I think we have a school listed here. Is that something I should do as well? Yes. Okay, I apologize. I missed that. I usually don't. So I will also recuse myself from action item, from consent item B. Questions or comments on consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please. Sorry. And we maybe usually do voicemail on that one. I may have missed that one.
So for approval of the consent agenda, Ms. DeLosa?
Yes.
Mr. Durham?
Yes.
Dr. Ernest?
Yes.
Dr. Freitas?
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau?
Yes.
Dr. Jenner?
Yes.
Mr. Mapes with respect to item A?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Moat?
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler?
Yes.
Mr. Watts with respect to item A only?
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved.
Thank you. New business, HA 1003, flexibility waivers for Monroe County Community School Corporation, North Gibson School Corporation, and South Gibson School Corporation.
We'll introduce those very quickly, and then if there are questions, I'm happy to take those. But this morning, we have 3 1003 flexibility waivers in front of the board. The first is for Monroe County Community School Corporation. The statute in question is school year, and they have asked to count the school year in minutes or hours rather than days. The staff recommendation is to grant. Next is North Gibson School Corporation. They have also asked to count the school year in minutes or hours versus days. The recommendation is to grant. They've also asked for a waiver from the school corporation annual performance report. Again, the recommendation is to grant that waiver. And then finally, South Gibson School Corporation has asked for a waiver from the school year requirement to count in minutes or hours versus days, and a waiver from the school corporation annual performance report. Both cases, the recommendation is to grant. In every case, these are statutes that have come before the board prior, and in every case, they have been granted.
Other questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Roll call, please.
And is the board okay with taking all 3 at once in this instance, or do you want to go
All
through school
three, is
list?
everyone comfortable with all 3 at once?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Dr. Jenner,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler,
Yes.
and Chairman Watts.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, item B, petition for recognition, Independent Schools Association of the Central States.
Good morning, State Board members. We have 2 requests, both items B and C, from third-party accrediting bodies that are seeking approval to be placed on a State Board recognized list of third-party accrediting bodies in which schools can seek accreditation. We worked with the Department of Education to develop a rubric for these, and we've received a handful of these. Some did not make the rubric and are going to resubmit with feedback. These 2 scored very highly on the rubric, and so we're recommending both of these be approved. And then if approved, they'll go on the list, and schools can seek accreditation and become SBOE recognized and receive choice scholarships and then administer iLearn and things like that. Also, A through F letter grade. So we would recommend these for approval.
Questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve new business item B. Roll call, please.
Action item B, Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas, Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Dr. Jenner,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler,
Yes.
Chair Watts.
Yes.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank
We will
you.
notify the
Moving on
association.
to C. Any questions by board members? Is there a motion to pass?
Move to approve.
So we have a motion and a second for new business item C. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Dr. Jenner,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler,
Yes.
Chairman Watts.
Yes.
Passes 11-0. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to new business item D, we also have a resolution honoring Dr. McCormick for her service to the state and students. I will read it. Whereas Dr. Jennifer McCormick has served as a member of Indiana State Board of Education in her capacity as Indiana's 44th State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Whereas Dr. McCormick was elected as to her position on November 8th, 2016 and served through January 11th, 2021. Whereas Dr. McCormick has served on the Board of Education Committee as chair. Excuse me. Whereas Dr. McCormick prioritized public service to her community and her state throughout her career, having served at every level of K-12 education. Whereas Dr. McCormick has been a strong advocate for teachers, administrators, and students across Indiana during her 4 years of service on the board. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Indiana State Board of Education wish to express their appreciation to Dr. McCormick for her service to the board and to recognize her for contributions as a board member, to acknowledge her dedicated leadership on the board, and to thank her for her dedication to Indiana's schools and Indiana students. Adopted on this day, January 13th, 2021. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Can we comment?
Absolutely, I apologize, yes.
So I want to take the opportunity to sincerely thank Dr. McCormick for her service for the past 4 years to the state of Indiana, to our educators, to our students. I tell you, I also really appreciate the Department of Education team, including Dr. McCormick, for all of their support during the transition. They were always a call away, and that is very, very appreciated, certainly by our new team, as well as I'm sure our schools and educators and students who we serve. So just want to say thank you and wish her the best.
Absolutely. Any other comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Question is the adoption of the resolution honoring Dr. McCormick. Ms. DeLosa.
Yes.
Mr. Durham.
Yes.
Dr. Ernest.
Yes.
Dr. Freitas.
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau.
Yes.
Dr. Jenner.
Yes.
Mr. Mapes.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Moat.
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler.
Yes.
Chairman Watts.
Yes.
Resolution has been adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to discussion, accountability framework feedback. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning, Chairman. As you all know, we are wrapping up a 6-month process to solicit feedback and generate ideas around the next iteration of ADF accountability in the state of Indiana. What is being presented and posted today and provided to you is the culmination of that process, and it reflects a summary of the stakeholder feedback we received throughout the last 2 months, along with technical responses from board staff for the board's consideration. This process was grounded in 3 core ideas. One is to start this process grounded in values and purpose, to make sure that the next iteration of ADF accountability is driven by the things that matter most to us and the why, right? Why we're doing this. The next is to create proactive stakeholder engagement. The rulemaking process is, by law, a rigid process. And so by engaging in these generative conversations on the front end, we were able to be flexible and nimble and proactively engage a broad and diverse group of stakeholders to help inform this process before the administrative process kicks in. And lastly is to prioritize transparency. The key was we want no one to be caught off guard. We also recognize the power of collective thought. So by putting these concepts and ideas out in the public, by being transparent about the feedback we're receiving, we're really creating a coalition of thought partners, all contributing to this meaningful process. And so, as I mentioned, this feedback summary really closes this initial generative stage. And the next phase is the board kickstarting the administrative rulemaking process. So that is the next steps. We are working closely with our colleagues in the General Assembly who are currently in session and considering the impacts of school accountability within the context of COVID-19 and in the broader context of Indiana education. So we're working closely with them to make sure that our work is happening in lockstep, and look forward to supporting the board as you all kind of take this to the next step in the administrative formal process to kind of finalize and codify the next iteration of the accountability model. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the feedback and encourage everyone in the public to go online, take a look at that. And also, we're happy to share the raw data that we received on the surveys as well.
Are there questions by board members? Dr. Freitas?
Ron, thanks for your good work and all the people working with you. At our last meeting, I introduced a new concept, I guess, to Indiana, and I just want to talk about that and keep it on the front burner. After the meeting, I did get some positive feedback, and also some legislators have been in contact with me about potentially some possible legislation. And so I want to keep it out there so the board has the opportunity to discuss and give input. Just briefly as a reminder, what I'm putting out there for us to consider is one accountability system with 2 tiers. So one accountability system, 2 tiers. And the difference in the tiers would be based on a school corporation or a school's historical record of accountability. So we have some schools in the state who have been at the highest level, the high-performing schools, for a number of years after years after years after years, but they still go through the same rigorous, some would argue, overkill system. These districts and schools have proven themselves, and the accountability system has become a hindrance to the day-to-day activity of teachers and schools. It's getting in the way of those who know how to provide high-performance education. And so my proposal for us to consider is that one tier would be for those schools that meet an eligibility requirement, and we would determine that. In conversations with others, someone suggested, for example, I'm not proposing this, but if they received a C or better for the past 3, 4, 5 years, then they would be placed in a tier. Those who don't meet that eligibility requirement would be placed in the other tier. So the first tier, those who have demonstrated historical high performance over a number of years, they would still have an accountability system, but it would be way ramped down because they've proven themselves. Why would we treat every single school in the state of Indiana the same? They're just not, and it's become a hindrance. Teachers are spending an awful lot of time on preparing for the test. We need to unleash those districts. They've proven themselves. Let them move on. Now, they would still have some requirements to meet. They'd still have to report to us. And if they no longer meet an eligibility requirement, then they would go to a particular tier, the other tier. So I'm just laying out the concept. The details we can work out later. The second tier would be those schools and school corporations who have not met the eligibility requirement, and they would be under the normal accountability system that you and the group decide and we finally approve. So I'm proposing that, I'm putting that out there. I would like to hear from those districts and those schools have received a C or better for the last 3 years. Do you want to be unleashed, or do you want to continue with the same burdensome system we've encumbered them with for a number of years? So is that something you and your committee and at some point the board can discuss? Maybe today, I don't know what the board like to do, but I want to get that into the hopper. I think there is a lot of support for that, and again, I want to unleash those who have proven themselves.
Yeah, my only response is board staff stands to support, the next iteration of this work and taking this to the formal administrative process. So so the answer to from staff perspective, I guess, board staff, DOE staff, is yeah, we stand to support that generative process, the iterative process with you all.
Okay, thank you.
Board comments?
Yes, I have a couple comments, and David, you know where I'm kind of at on this,
Sure.
but in your concept, my district's in the first tier. We've been a B and better corporation-wide. All of our buildings have been Cs and better, and we need to work hard to get better every day. That I want to have an accountability plan in place to make certain that we continue to serve students. Is the accountability system a burden? No. Is the accountability system, I think, upside down? Yes, because it should be focused more on K1, 2, and 3 for literacy than what it is in the middle about whether or not we're passing a test. Because if we don't have literacy skills, well, it really doesn't matter what we do after grade 3, because those kids are going to struggle. So we may not be measuring the right thing with what our accountability system is. And maybe we need to have something that has more of an influence in K1, 2, 3, and then something at the end that says you completed a career pathway, got a high school diploma, and you can either be enrolled, enlisted, or go into the workforce, be employed. So I would encourage the board to have a work session at some time in February or March, outside of this meeting, where we can just have dialogue about this and get some thoughts out about when we finally go to the rulemaking process, what should that rule look like? And maybe it's time to say, well, let's get this right, and let's say, what do we want to be accountable for in the state of Indiana? And, I really struggle when everybody says, well, we're just teaching to the test. That's wrong. If you're doing that as an educator, that's wrong. I mean, you ought to be growing your kids and growing your kids academically so they can critically think and problem solve. So I think a larger discussion in a meeting like the Tuesday before we meet on a Wednesday might be a good way for this board to have that conversation, look at all the data and information that Ron's done an excellent job to provide us, and then be able to put something down on paper.
Yeah, David, I would agree with some of your assumptions in terms of one size does not fit all, and can we figure out how to have a system that, I'm sorry, I'll just briefly take this off. So I agree with some of your assumptions in terms of one size does not fit all, and we need to try and accommodate that. I'm not sure I agree with all the solutions there, because I think some of that kind of throws the baby out with the bathwater. We need this information in terms of how kids are performing. And again, I'm not sure how onerous it is. There's the question of the system itself, which we're going to explore over the next few weeks and months. And then there's the policies that's attached to it, which I think are some of the things you're getting on. I'm not sure when is the appropriate time. I guess we can have those discussions in parallel, but they're kind of two different things, right? Of the measurement system itself, which I do think we need the information in terms of how kids are performing. So to say, some folks can do away with this onerous system, I'm not sure I agree with all that. But by and large, I mean, the system's not working as we want it to. and so, well, I mean, I'm not saying we just embrace the status quo. I'm just saying, I'm looking forward to having that discussion in the work session and the meetings ahead about how we try to thread that needle.
And I think we would all concede that this system needs work. I don't think anyone here thinks that it does not. What I want us to think about, or what I personally try to think about is, whatever we put into accountability is what schools are going to do. We understand that. So let's think about, what do we want to drive? What are those things that we want to drive? Because Pat mentioned progress monitoring earlier. To me, K1, 2 progress monitoring for reading for students is absolutely key. And it's not something that we truly drive right now with our accountability system. So what can we put into place? I don't know the answers to these things. That's why, David, your work session is a great idea. But these are the things that we need to have in place. What are those things that we want to drive? Because whatever we put into this is what's going to get done in schoolhouses. And we need to make sure that we get this right this time. This is very, very, very important. We've all seen, to David's point, the stress that this can add to buildings. Some of it's self-induced, but nonetheless, that stress is added there. So making sure that we give them something that they believe in, that this is a true reflection of what is happening in my building, is probably the most important thing that we're going to do over the next 3 or 4 years. So I think getting this right is key for us. I don't think that we can get it done in a single work session. I do like Pat's idea of kind of piggybacking it. I mean, we're all busy and some of us have to travel for long distances. So if we could piggyback it with a meeting, that would be great. If we could do a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Wednesday, Thursday. Obviously schedules are tough. But yeah, love the ideas of getting all the work that you've done, Ron, which has been amazing, by the way, and bringing that together and just throwing out ideas. And some of them are going to stick and some of them are not, but I think that's really healthy. Yes, sir.
I think the other thing, and Pat, you brought this up the last time, and I appreciated that, because you know I'm passionate about that. I think the other thing we need to keep at the forefront of this that could help bring, I think, a mesh of best of Dave's world, what he wants, and what we're all talking about here is that idea of a dashboard system. And I know that's been talked about, and I would still argue more so than just a information source. I think that could help us really drive an accountability system to even look at different things for different schools, right? And again, I know we're not going into detail about that now, but I just think a lot of times we don't use what technology has enabled us to be able to do, right? That a parent could literally go in and pick the areas of their school that are very important to them, right? I think we need to get beyond the just getting a diploma. Is my student going to really be ready for a job or to be at the next level of college or whatever, right? No secret, I've been for outcomes and still am. And I think that a dashboard could help us get there even more, again, than just, I'd love for us to pursue just going beyond, hey, here's the information. It could be a part of that, right? There could be those 3 or 4 items that are the big things, but then you could also go, those 3 or 4 things could pop a grade up on a website. You could put 4 or 5 more things in there and it could pop a grade. I think there's so much that technology can do. I don't know how to do it, but there are people who know how to make that happen, right? And I think that could be so rich for our parents and people to be able to look at, right? So, sorry, I needed to throw that in there because I think that's a mix, and Pat, you had brought that up, and I know we've talked a lot about that, and that's not, and the other thing I would say lastly on that I want to be clear about, and I've asked enough questions to know I'm okay to say this, that's not a burden for schools when we talk about a dashboard. That's information that's already there and already collected and can be then disaggregated, reaggregated, however you want to look at that. So thank you.
What I hear several of you say is we have an opportunity ahead, a major opportunity ahead to build a trusted and transparent system with transparent data, right, for our families, for our educators to use. And it could be set up as a dashboard, there could be various indicators, but that's a huge opportunity that this board can have. This feedback from our stakeholders is incredibly helpful, Ron, as we move this forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ron, can I ask you one more question? And I should, I know I'm glad I'm asking it publicly. In the work that you've done, I know that you and I had talked earlier, we're looking at this accountability system. We have that alternative accountability system out there as well as a piece. In any of your discussion, in any of your work, can we ever get to a point where, and this goes back to Dave's point, right? Every school is different, where we wouldn't need an alternative accountability system, or what does that look like? I'm not really sure exactly what I'm asking, but I'm asking what are your thoughts on that? Where have we, my thought would be, gosh, if we really did go to a dashboard that could allow us to manipulate look by school, however that looks, that we wouldn't need that. But and if that hasn't even been a piece yet, but I think that's something that we need to discuss a little bit too in this process, or we just completely leave it separate. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll withhold from try and share personal opinions and just share kind of a summary of what we've been thinking about, and also the feedback we've received. I think the possibility is open and explicitly discussed to create a flexible enough system where we could capture all different types of schools and not have to have separate systems. the graduation index was maybe a concept or idea that was presented reflective of that notion. Simultaneously, we have received explicit feedback about the need for a unique system based on unique schools that serve a specific student population, which is why that statute was passed to begin with. So I think the response to your question, withholding, personal opinions, is the concept has been on the table and discussed, and we have also received explicit feedback about the challenges associated with trying to accomplish that. And this is where you balance, and it talks about in the framework, complexity versus transparency. Once your system is so dynamic, so complex that it captures everybody accurately, it might not capture anybody transparently. And so you have to balance those two things. So I think that answers your question.
Thanks for your comment, Board. I'm just asking for an opportunity to look at some new things. I think Pat raised an excellent issue. This board, for the 9 years that I've been on it, have talked about, and BJ knows this, literacy, how literacy drives the success of students, and you have to get to them early. I would love to see that part of the accountability system. That could be one item of many items that we put forward in a new accountability system. I think we can lead the country. I've been following some other states. They're doing the same thing over and over and over again. They don't have any meetings, they just adopt it. Staff recommends we keep the same accountability system. There's a few phone calls before the meeting to line up the votes, and then everyone says yes. I don't think that's a good process. I think we really need to take the time. Here's my question for Ron. Ron, as we get ready, it looks like we're gonna have a different meeting. As you present elements that would go into an accountability system, I see all the elements and I analyze them on the basis of, does this element really drive student achievement or not? And as I look at all the elements, I do see some elements that clearly align with student achievement. However, there's about 70% of them that don't align in any way with student achievement or success. So I'm asking staff, any element that you present to us, could you attach the credible research that demonstrates very clearly that that element will drive student success and student achievement? So we don't waste time arguing over, should we include attendance at school, for example?
The answer to your question is yes, and I'm just going to take a point of personal privilege here to say the framework, I think, is grounded in the same exact principles you just mentioned. It talks about, it gives a series of questions to consider when looking at an individual indicator. Included in those questions are exactly what you just shared. In addition to that, it talks about indicators being aligned to actual academic success. And so in the full framework, it's titled, I think online, Full Framework with Citations, there are a series of citations, not a comprehensive list, just a few, to support the indicators that are included in that model. And I think, yes, we will, supporting this board in your discussions, if there are requests for indicators and any indicators included in the framework, present that kind of connection. Here's how this connects to student learning. Here's how far it is or how close it is. And then also, I think the framework provides a little bit of that as well. So we'll continue to push those.
Thanks for doing that, because we're going to get questions on why we accept certain elements and not others. Yep. And if you do the hard work, which we've done before in other committees we've worked on, it really helps to justify our decision if we can show that connection versus just accepting things without that research base. So thanks, Ron.
The only thing I want to pose just for us to think about too, and Ron, we're going to get some work sessions on the books, correct? We can get those, do a doodle poll and get some work sessions booked.
Work sessions.
We can get some work sessions booked over the next few months.
We can talk.
One, to David's point, let's make sure that we're driving what we want students to do. And two, I think we need to make sure that we're doing what we're evaluating schools on things that they can control. Because that's a hard balance. And a lot of times we evaluate schools on things that they can't control. So as long as we make sure that we're evaluating schools on things that they can control and they can, how can you make yourselves better, to pass minority, or continuous improvement? Whether we're one of the most successful schools in the state of Indiana or one of the schools that struggles, how are we getting better every single day? That's what we want accountability to drive. Any other comments by board members? Seeing none, we will move on. Ron, thank you. Awesome as always. Board officer elections. If I could, I would like to make a nomination first. I would like to do a, oh, I'm sorry, Brian, yes, come back up. I know we had a question on new business C. I apologize.
So apologize for this. At this point, staff would be asking for the board to reconsider on item C and to table this for a future meeting. There's some things that we want to look at with that particular third party body. So if that's okay with the board, we recommend that.
Are
And then
there,
we can work on that.
so the concerns that have arisen, do you want us to recuse the motion and the vote, or how would that work, Chad? What are you asking?
It'd just be at this point, a motion to reconsider the approval and to table it.
So moved.
So we have a motion
Thank you.
to reconsider and table new business item C.
Correct.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Roll call, please, Chad.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Dr. Jenner,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler,
Yes.
Chairman Watts.
Yes.
Thank you, and we will bring that back next meeting.
Thank you. Moving on to board office elections, if I could, I would like to, I'm going to make a nomination in the form of a slate. I would like to nominate our new Secretary of Education, Dr. Katie Jenner, to serve as chair, Katie Moat to serve as vice, and Pete Miller to serve as secretary.
Second.
Are there any other motions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Chad.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Aye.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Dr. Jenner,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
thank you, Ms. Rentschler,
Yes.
and Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion's approved.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the cause? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Aye.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We stand adjourned.